Good morning, Quasar Markets Live. Happy Friday to everybody. This is your main man, Hondo Greenberg, bringing you all the news around the markets here this morning. I am solo again. Steve Big Beat Orr is finishing up his holiday. He will be back on Monday with us. First things on deck, November jobs reports came out. Employment rose by 227,000 and the jobless rate reached 4.2% after having a slight downward shift. We see it moving back up. In general, let me first hide that for a second. Markets liked the news right off the bat. We had been trending negative for open on QQQ and SPY. You can see that nice little wick here we had at 8:30. Took us up from about 522 right up to its current level here, well, it's actually back in that 522.74 area, but we had moved up and holding up. It did give a nice little kick up to Bitcoin, which is actually holding up better since the news here. And I had pulled up the fact that the Fed watch is now moving 87.3% of the people on the survey thinking that this will open the door for the Fed to cut another quarter point here in 12 days or so, 12 days and 4 hours. So, it does bring that a little bit more into play. Just a week ago, that was at 66%. So you can see it does seem to be shifting in that direction, but we know all it takes is one little data point. But this was the last jobs report they will see. They'll get some weekly numbers, but this was the last, non-farm payroll that we will see. A big part of this number, though, also, I do want to point out that 227,000 are people who are coming back to work after the hurricanes. So we do think I heard an estimate of about 80,000 from the CNBC folks, which was taking into account the strikes that ended, whether it be Boeing or the fact of the hurricanes. So not as blow away as we saw it there. We do see, one of the first economists out there, Mohammed El Arian, who again, I don't think he's with CNBC anymore, but he was. It looks like he's now doing some stuff with Bloomberg. He described today's job release as somewhat strong report, but not consistently strong, adding that it should pave the way for the interest rate cut by the Fed later this month. It is strong on the earnings side. It is strong on the labor participation coming down side, less supply, and it's also strong on a small beat, he told Bloomberg TV. But the fact that the unemployment rate went up means that the Fed will be comfortable cutting by 25 basis points. It means the markets will increase the probability of this happening. We're already seeing that come. And then we do get from CIBC World Market, Avery Shenif, also saying that this November jobs data is the kind of data we should have for the Fed to be comfortable with a quarter pay rate cut. We also see Jason Furman, who's a former top economist for the Obama administration, said that the Fed is likely to cut in 2 weeks. But when the Fed will cut after December will be anyone's guess. So it seems like that is what they are, watching there. So that's what we see again. Markets seem to like it so far in general. Bitcoin, I do want to talk a little bit here about Bitcoin. Yesterday at about 540 or so, 525, 530 area, we had a massive crash. It was a definite market mover that did this. It was some manipulation. It cleared out a lot of the, very optimistic longs in the perpetual futures markets. We can take a look at what that number was. But what I more wanted to point out is it didn't even take an hour. And in fact, if you even look and break this down into like a 5-minute chart, you will see that the bounce back from Bitcoin dropping down, from that 99 level down to that 92 in a matter of, 5-10 minutes, it moved back up to that 97, 98 level again in under 30 minutes. So very, very positive for me. It shows all of the desires to buy dips. I think it does warn people. Will we see that 70,000, 80,000 that's been talked about? I think that got a lot less likely after this, crash yesterday. And immediate recovery. So if we see three or four more tests like that, that's when you really would worry. But you can see, it was bought up aggressively. Look at that green volume candle here, right at 5:30. Within 5 minutes of the bottoming, it was back up again already at 95, recovering over $2,000 in a matter of 5 minutes. So I thought it was a very, very strong indicator of strength within the market for crypto. So was happy to see that. Uh, Also had some other news on that side. Trump has named um, made a couple of more moves, and David Sachs is going to be the crypto and AI czar. He is one of what they call the PayPal mafia, the folks with Elon Musk and Peter Thiel that started PayPal back in the day. And they're calling it the White House AI and crypto czar. Sachs will guide the administration's policies for artificial intelligence and cryptocurrency, Trump wrote. Some of that work will include creating a legal framework for crypto, as well as leading a presidential council of advisors on science and technology. David will focus on making America the clear global leader in both areas, Trump wrote. We will safeguard free speech online and steer us away from big tech bias and censorship. The appointment signals that the second Trump administration is rewarding Silicon Valley figures who supported his campaign. We know that he was a big booster, gave a lot of money. So I do think it's positive for the crypto industry. I do think that he has been good. I don't like his connection with Shamuth that much. I'm not a big fan of his, quite honestly. And he does a podcast with those, him and Jason Calacanis and David Friedberg. I do think that Shamuth will make money on the backs of others at any moment, where some of these other guys have a little bit more of a conscience. So, again, good for crypto, should be good for AI, should be good for tech overall. Happy to see all of that playing out. As we get about 22 minutes away from the open here, as I mentioned, Bitcoin holding up at 98,500. Love to see that. Ethereum fell down and was trying to break above 4. Never quite got there yesterday. Never got back above 4,000, but did hold up still nicely here at 38.56. The other one that I had to laugh is it's funny when gold gets stuck at a number like 2650, 2700, like we've seen here for a while. No one seems to give it all the hard times that we give Bitcoin, right? So gold doing okay here, sitting at that 2630 spot. Silver 31 has been stuck in that 31, 32 area for a decent amount of time. Nat gas back at 295, so hasn't made its move yet. Again, those of you think that the cold spell that is hitting us now is going to continue. I know Steve is still bullish on UNG here over the next few months. Today would be a day to get in under 3, like Steve has talked about. Mentioned SPY here is. Whoops, hit the wrong button there, sorry. SPY here did not fully complete my move to 609.32, but for all intents and purposes has finished. Oops, that's on a weekly now, sorry. Has finished its move up to that measured mark here. So now we're watching for a pullback towards that 599.81, or do we see the continuation and breakout? I guess we should chart that here. So if we're charting that, we copy that first move up here, first measured move that it took. We paste it, and we're going to put it right above this one. So what we'd start to look at is our next target to the upside on a breakout above 609 would be a move towards that 621.85 area. And again, we've seen a lot of calls for 630 by the end of the year, right? Was I think the number that was being ballied around a lot. The top side of that would come in just above that at 633. So measured moves seem to work with SPY recently, going all the way back here to August, but I really started following it at the beginning of September. We'll see what happens there. QQQ is slightly up here, and we're starting to get to a point where we can start to measure this one out a little bit here. In fact, let's throw away what we got on the screen, and let's rotate this into a rectangle. And then if we say this was the area where we want to sort of start to watch from. So we made a move from here to here, right? And it actually holds up. You can see we made the move, second move right to it. So this is looking like we finally do have a decent start to look at here. And what I'm saying is, here when we look back towards the end of September, when, after we gapped up here, so we settled back down, found ourselves a little bit of a base in this area, in that 480 area. We made that move up from 480 to right about 500. Retraced right to about the half point here, a half measured trace back before challenging it again, right? Half, three-quarter pullback, challenged it again, three-quarter pullback again, and then that's when it blew through it. But again, what did it make? A full measured move straight up to that 516 spot. Made a full retracement, unfortunately, and then made a move back up to that measured spot. And then yesterday, we saw it gap up, and now right below. So if we want to set what the next target here to keep an eye on, again, it would be the midpoint here, which is right about 525.50. So right about there is what we're looking at here. You can see it's right at it too. So we're right at the spot where we could see some movement here one way or the other when it comes to QQQ. So those are sort of the measured moves I am watching. WTI still pegged just below 68 here. Hasn't been able to really move around that. That is about the bottom of the range. I would get interested on any move back into the 66 area, maybe for a play in the gas area. They did have a little bit of news on that also. And what we're sort of seeing being covered here is that oil futures, like we said, fell on Friday, on track for weekly closes. OPEC has postponed the plan to unwind of production cuts, but it failed to soothe fear of a crude surplus. WTI for January delivery fell 59 cents to 67.71 a barrel. And Brent, which we know is out of Europe, fell about 54 cents on this. And we know that OPEC Plus on Thursday agreed again to delay the unwind of 2.2 million barrels a day of production, postponing the start of the phase out from January until April. Anticipation of such a move had provided support for crude earlier in the week, leaving the markets vulnerable to profit taking after the event occurred. The old Sullivan news. It does eat quite heavily into the surplus that was expected over 2025. However, the extension and the slower return of barrels is not enough to push the market into the deficit next year, wrote the head of commodities and strategy at ING. The move still leaves the markets in surplus for the first half of 2025, although admittedly the surplus is more manageable, around 500,000 barrels a day versus the 1 million that had previously been expected. So that's what we are seeing in the oil markets. We were seeing or are seeing yields drop a little bit here after, again, the expectation that we will see the Fed move down. And again, we talk about money moves first. Interest rates are right there with money and moving quickly. And they moved quickly to the downside on that news and are continuing to drop. 10-year now down about 4.13. Again, remember that had capped up at about 4.5 here in mid-November. So a nice pullback here. But a lot of room to move. You really don't see any support start to pick up here towards you get to like back to that 395 area. We always have a little bit of a $4 area where you get a little bit of support and resistance too. And like we talked about, 4 might be the new neutral, so for a while. And that was talked about across most of the stations, in that if we do see this cut in December, that we probably won't see another one for a little bit. As we look at the sectors across the Spider ETFs, we see 2 open up in the negative side. XLE, which is energy sector, and XLRE, which is real estate, are the 2 looking to close open on the downside. Biggest winner so far on the upside is consumer discretionary, and we'll talk a little bit more about that here, led by Lululemon, who posted great earnings, and a couple of others there. So retail continuing to have a strong bid. And as a segue, we'll mention that our normal spot by Scott Bauer is being done by the legend himself, Charlie Moon, the disciple of trend, at 1 o'clock today live from the SIBO. He will be talking about retail and what he's seeing there. Charlie always has great insights. We are about 13 minutes from the open. Want to point out that the stock 600 up slightly. Interesting, and we don't have Stephen Flanagan on today. We will have Stephen back next Wednesday. European stocks not really hurt that much. In fact, rallying a little bit after the no confidence vote of the French government this past week. So that a little bit surprising to me. We do see Shanghai up about 1%. The Nikkei is down about 0.29%. As we look across the crypto markets, as we talked about, Bitcoin up around 98,700, very solid. Ethereum up around 2.51 here, looking good. Solana at 234. We see XRP holding up pretty nicely in that 228 area. I will mention that the new appointment crypto czar there, David Sachs, is a fairly good appointment for Ripple, and that he is, again, that's one little world of people there. Some of the folks that are involved with Ripple came from that PayPal mafia they talk about. Cardano down slightly, but holding at about $1.15. Again, I'm liking the way these things are sort of holding up here. I am good on an upward move like this to see that little pullback. In fact, if we start to look at fib levels here, let's say if we do the full peak to peak, a nice pullback towards this 109 on Cardano would be completely healthy. We haven't made it quite there yet. Got pretty close yesterday, and maybe that was it, and we make that move back up. But we see that same thing if I trace, Ripple's move up. We can see it came almost down to that 50% retracement here, and now making a move back up. So pretty solid by all of them. I've seen, the doom and gloom, the sky is falling, you should have sold, you should have done this. I will say I was hoping to see a little bit more of a push here from the David Sachs news. Haven't really gotten it, but the part of that is we already got that big push up. I think Bitcoin breaking that 100K and not just breaking it, but blowing up to 104. Took a little wins out of the sale of everything. It's like, just take a deep breath now. I think focus is on the stock market today and what's going on there. And then let's see, we get into the weekend pretty quickly here, and we could see a good weekend for crypto. So again, I am bullish, 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 especially until we get into the inauguration. Okay. Crypto mining stocks and so forth. Mixed bag here. Most of them opening up after a nice day up yesterday. Hut up another 3% here too. BitDeer, another one that is up very nicely here. I do know CleanSpark. We had Ron Williams ask us about that yesterday, one that he's tracking. Up about 2% in the pre-market hours, so hopefully Ron made a little money there. We'll say what I don't like to see so far is IBIT, Bitcoin, all of the major ETFs are actually right now at a negative when Bitcoin's at a positive. So that has me a little bit concerned here. Part of that could be, trying to catch up to yesterday. Remember, a lot of that stuff happened, like I said, after hours. So there could be a little bit of a hangover trying to catch up here. We'll see if that's the case. But that can be a little bit negative. Again, Mara up, MSTR up. So we are seeing that across them. Things to talk about today, again, Coinbase up, Robinhood up. Like we talked about, most of the crypto ones are up. We got some other movers to talk about today. Let's get started here. Hewlett Packard up about 2.45% here. Nice little move up, back up. Not going to open at its all-time high here, or its 52-week high. I always say that. I got to remember it's 52-week high at 22.82, but looking to open up around 22.20 here. And they did report a nice beat here of about 3 cents per share, or about 4% on the EPS, and a 2.5% win on the top level. The company's first quarter earnings guidance met analyst forecasts, and as we said, up about 2.5% here. So Hewlett Packard, one of the ones that had some decent earnings. Then I talked about retail. Look at this. Lululemon up almost 10% here between the end of yesterday and this morning. Way up at 377.66. Now again, nowhere near their 52-week high, but a nice recovery here. Be interesting to see if what Charlie has to say today is he selling into this move up, or does he believe that it actually has the room to move. I tend to think usually after a move this significant, we might see a retracement towards that 200-day MA. So could be a time to fade Lulu here today. We'll keep an eye on that. And they did, revenue rose 2% in Americas, while international sales for them had jumped 25%. They are seeing a same store sales decline in America of about 2%, but the yoga pants maker raised its fiscal year outlook and said it was pleased with the start to its holiday season. Said it expects fiscal year revenue of between 10.45 billion to 10.49 million, which tops previous estimates, and earnings forecast moving up again almost $1 a share to that 14.10 area from about 13, well, actually about a 30-cent move. So Lululemon moving up pretty nicely there. Another one that is moving in the wrong direction, IoT, which is Samsara, which is an Internet of Things technology company. They top forecast, but its fourth quarter revenue forecast disappointed. They said it sees revenue of 334 to 336 million in the fourth quarter, which wasn't far away from what the estimates are. This is one that I might be considering here, that it might be a time to maybe buy the dip here on this. So IoT one, that might be a buy the dip moment here. I am a big fan of it. Those that don't know, Internet of Things are, a lot of things that you don't realize um, you rely on or use, you know, it's your automatic, you know, your smart thermometer in your home. It is, or thermostat. It's, you know, if you've got one of those refrigerators that tells you when you're out of milk and all that. It's also Internet of Things is going to be how in the future autonomous driving talks to each other, how these cars communicate. So it is really an important area. It's also out here, even in Ohio, where I am, in, you know, the middle of farmland. It is widely used for irrigation purposes, automatic irrigation information being relayed back to, you know, the owners of these huge farms that are out there, especially, you know, the ones owned by the Conagras of the world and things like that, where a lot of automation can be done, and they can, you know, use this information to properly get ready for storms, to properly water, irrigate, whatever it might be, test soil conditions, all of that kind of stuff. So, one that I might be watching here to buy the dip on. So that is one there. Did want to mention another one I thought was a little not funny but interesting is Ulta Beauty. They had a nice earnings beat, up about 9% here. And we do know, and their CEO Dave Kimball said the company's better than expected profit and sales reflected improved sales trends and a strong financial discipline. The stock's up, like I said, almost 10%. The reason I think this is interesting, if you remember, Mr. Buffett got in here at about the price we're at now. I think it was, you know, somewhere in this $400 range. And then he dumped it when it went down. So one of the few things that he has not maybe got the right read on. Maybe he had it, didn't have enough faith, but doesn't look like he had strong enough hands here. So interesting to see that. Again, up almost 9% after earnings. So again, another retailer that did pretty good. Another company with a nice earnings beat was DocuSign here. And again, you can see the explosive move this has done, you know, since August. It's almost doubled. And they beat analyst estimates of 87 cents as revenue grew 8% to $754.8 million. The subscription revenue at the e-signature company rose about 8% from a year earlier, and billings increased 9%. They raised their fiscal year revenue outlook to 2.96 billion, so definitely moving in the right direction. Same thing, GitLab had a nice earnings beat here. We talked about this company is where it's a depository where a lot of developers store their software code, and they do what's called open sourcing it so others can use it to create code, can look at it to help them find bugs or any issues that could be with it. They smashed their EPS by about 48%. They were expected to report earnings of about 15 cents per share. They did 23 cents per share. So definitely a big move up. They did say that their co-founder Sid Brandage was stepping down as CEO, unfortunately, to focus on his treatment for cancer, and that Bill Staples, the former CEO of New Relic, was going to be his successor. So people seem to be happy with everything there. Nice little move up. Memes are back, or are they? That's the question everyone is asking. There were some cryptic tweets by our man Roaring Kitty yesterday that got people all excited in the world of GME and AMC. And we do see AMC jumped up about 6% yesterday, up about another 1.92% here in the pre-market hours. But AMC, which had made a move up, has retraced all of it, did not, you know, wasn't able to sustain. So we're seeing people already talk that he doesn't have any, you know, pull anymore and all this. I'd just say watch out for that because, you know, we saw with Chewy, all you're going to do is pull up a Chewy chart to see if he actually still, you know, has influence. Because you can see right here that this is the day back in May where he tweeted and Chewy was at 16.95. he pushed that sucker all the way up to 40 before he sold out. So um, he's one of those folks that I do not fade, and it's more just an interesting and fun story to watch here. Will be, is it back? Is the meme stock trade back in groove here? So I'll definitely be watching that today. Smith and Wesson down about 19% here today. They firearms maker posted earnings that missed estimates. They also said that there's softer demand trends across the industry. So Smith and Wesson moving to the downside. Couple of companies I was watching here on the pumpers here this morning, and it looks like it's continuing to pump up. The first one, ASAN now up 30% here. Ran away. I was hoping to catch that on a break of that 1987. Did not happen. Look at that, 2072. This thing is rocking, so it's taken off. We are open now. The market is open. Let's see what we get here. Tick is slightly negative. Advanced decline, though, we are heavily 3,400 to the north here, so looking good there. QQQ opening up about 0.2 of a point to the upside. We do see SPY opening up, moving to the upside. Dow up 0.2 of a percentage point, moving up. Bitcoin now at 99,400, definitely running here. So is all crypto running? Let's take a look. It does look that way. Crypto's running. Look at XRP up 3.45%. Uniswap up 9.34. Uniswap should be one of the big winners like we talked about here when it comes to crypto over the next administration. Getting some regulations around decentralized exchanges will be important. Uniswap is one of those companies that has realized they didn't want to get shut down, so started to work a little bit with FINRA and other companies, so it will be there. Hey, Ron, how you doing? Hey, man, did you jump in on that clean spark, buddy? It jumped up nicely in the early morning hours. I was giving you a little bit of a shout out there, buddy. Up about 2.27% here. So nice little move to the upside by Clean Spark here. One we'll be keeping an eye on. Mara up 3% now. MSTR up a little more than 2% here this morning. Let's take a look at our indices, see what's going on across the sectors. So we do see pretty much everything except for energy. I don't know what XLC is offhand. Communications. I never can remember that one. So communications and energy moving down here. I will say nat gas, like I said, back under that $3 level. So people that wanted to follow big beat in on that, you can do that now. Already got our first holding. First stop. Oris. That's the one that has jumps a decent amount. Oriental Rise. Look at that one. 1540. Wow. I don't know that we'll catch up to that sucker. That's a heck of a move. Oh, actually, you can. This is an interesting one. Coming off a hold at 1536, you've got definite room to 2124. And you can see it hit 56 yesterday. So this is definitely one in play. ORIS. Coming off a halt here might be one you want to keep an eye on. Speaking of the ones I was looking at here this morning, ASAN. Trying to make a move here. If we see this break across here, this $20 level, this is another one in play. UPC blasted off already right at that 930 mark. Another one we were keeping an eye on here. That one seems to have made its move. If it breaks that 390, got definite room to 450 quickly. ALBT moving up nicely here. You got to like the fact, look at that. That's a nice little bottom trend line here. Looks great. That's one you could definitely play here off that bottom trend line right where it's at. So this is an interesting one, $6. I have to talk about one that I have not been following, but wow, has anybody been watching RCL? RCL, man. Look at this sucker. I didn't realize how much this has moved up over the last, 4 or 5 months. I mean, since August again, in August, 131, now 253. I definitely has slept on this stock. So, definitely one that has just blown away, heading towards all-time highs, it looks like, again. Um, so one to keep an eye on there. Coinbase up about 3% here, 331. So looks like it wants to challenge back up towards its all-time highs here. Again, with the new AI and crypto czar being named, another one of those pushes we could see in crypto. I think it's going to hit on crypto more this weekend than here during market hours. I think with a Friday, um, the good jobs report, the thought of a 25% cut by the FOMC here, I do think that we are going to see some money push into the stock market today. Might give those crypto stocks a little bit of breathing room here before moving more up on the weekend. Again, we're still moving up across SPY and QQQ here. The small caps moving up nicely, up almost 3/4 of a percentage point here. Bitcoin stalling out just above 99. Ethereum back above 3,900. Love to see that. We've talked about it. Gold seems to be stuck just below that 2650 area. It's definitely struggling there. Same thing, silver right around 31. WTI 67. So it's getting close to that area I talked about. I think anything below 66, what is this? 66.7 on WTI becomes a buying opportunity, in my opinion, here. Anything below this 66.72, you can see this nice green area you have down to about 65.53. Love to get it in that area, but I don't know it goes that far. Keep an eye on that. ASTS up nicely here, about 4.64%. Interesting chart breakup here. It does look like it's consolidated in this zone, one that I do think wants to break out here. So keep an eye on ASTS Space Mobile. We've seen it in Lunar and others moving up nicely. Looks like it found good support in that 2175 area. Does have the 50-day MA, but even that gives you a good 10% move to the upside here before you hit that 50-day MA. So one to keep an eye on here, ASTS, that I think could have a little bit of legs. Again, China, which was the last thing, this was the laggard. China was the last thing starting to recover here. BABA starting to move up. Was listening to Jeremy Vreeland and Matthew Tuttle. They think that this might be the time to start to buy China, since it looks like that there will be a stimulus announced. At least that is what the market is expecting, and we have seen nice bounce ups. You can see these gaps up on BABA. Whenever we've seen those stimuluses come out, we know that in September they announced two, and you can see the move from 90, that it ultimately brought it all the way up to 117. He was talking about probably playing Baidu, I believe. He was talking, it looked like a better chart, and I can see what he's talking about there. Here you've got that double bottom, good solid support right around 80. It's at 86 here, and you can look at a play all the way up to this 95 area. So I see what he's saying there. We've talked about with Big Beat is starting to get back into Europe. Stephen Flanagan saying we might be a month or two before the bottom, but again, he doesn't try to time bottoms. You shouldn't try to time bottoms. It should be more about theses that you have, and then you start to use the technical analysis from there. So that's definitely something we're going to talk more about here over upcoming weeks. The sort of connection and disconnection that should be in place when we talk about fundamental analysis versus technical analysis. And to me, with fundamental analysis, is you're developing a thesis for a sector, a company, whatever it might be, based upon, fundamental analysis, whether it be based upon their earnings, whether it be based upon growth, subscriptions. There's, just so many metrics you could be looking at there. You think their EPS, you think they're going to outperform the rest of the sector that they're in. So you start to tune in there. And then we use technical analysis for our entries, our exits, and starting to give ourselves our, take profits and stop losses. So I do want to talk about that, because I do know sometimes, certain shows or certain educators will really focus so much on just one side of that, whether it be the technical analysis side, and they do leave out almost all of the fundamentals. They'll tell you they only follow price action. And then there are those that are just more fundamental traders, like we've seen Warren Buffett and some of these others. I fall in between there. I think that both are important. Like I say, what I want to talk more about and talk with some other really good traders that I know is how do they look at the two. And we see that even with the best of technical analysis, again, Jeremy Vreeland and Matthew Tuttle, who tend to be very much focused on the technical analysis part, but they figured out they wanted to be in the nuclear sector, and then using technical analysis, broke down the plays that they thought were the best plays in nuke well before other people and were positioned. That's what we're talking about. That's what I'm saying when it comes to the China plays right now. I'm not saying you should be buying it today. I'm saying you should start to do more research. You should start to take a look at the different companies within the sector. There it's a geographical play. Which Chinese companies do you think will benefit the most from their stimulus package? Do some research there, see what's happened in the past, find that out, and then go from there. That's how you build a strong thesis and a strong trading position. And there are a lot of the people that do really well. We've talked with Agnieszka Wood, our trading mindset coach, who's been in Carvana forever, CNVA, and again, she got in there, not CNVA, what did I do wrong? Carvana, I always forget their ticker, CVNA. She's been in this thing for, again, 6-7 months since it was down in this, area here in that 40 to 50 area. I think she said she caught it when it gapped up the first time at 60. This thing's traded at 258, but she had a thesis. She stayed with it. She, got in. She moved some of it out, but she still holds some of her position, and it's continuing to move up. Same thing with the folks that have been on NVIDIA. Same thing with the folks that have been on MicroStrategy, right? Is, riding these things up because you have a thesis. I talk about them a lot, right? I'm big on, and I think you have to be right now, big upon all of that intersection between blockchain technology and TradFi. So companies like Coinbase, we know that Coinbase has already won, the contract to be the custodian for the U.S. Marshals Bitcoin. Wouldn't that put them sort of in a driver's seat when the new rules and regulations come out when it comes to custody of Bitcoin, and we see how that's going to be done with all these family offices and hedge funds and other people that want to hold the actual Bitcoin as opposed to just a touch of the ETF. Coinbase, Kraken, Gemini, some of these companies are going to be very well suited because they've been building out this stuff forever, where it could be a two-way street there too. Some of them will get acquired, some of them will get bought up by the BlackRocks of the world to do that, and some others. It's funny you say that, Ron. I am actually going to be on. We're going to do that the opposite way this time. We did have Jeremy on about a week or two ago. I'm not sure if you were able to tune in for that one. But I'm going on Jeremy's show next Tuesday. So next Tuesday, I'll be going on with them to talk a little bit because, as you know there, Matthew Tuttle, who does that with him, is the man behind Tuttle Capital, the ETFs, MSTU, BTCL, some of these leveraged plays on MicroStrategy and Bitcoin, and they are looking to get in even further into some of those crypto plays. So I am going to get on there and talk to them a little bit about what's going on there. And so we will definitely do that. And then, Ron, we're also going to have Jeremy on, and him and I are going to do a recurring session where we're going to work on the wheel trade. He is big on the wheel trade. I think we've narrowed down that BITF is really the one we're sort of looking at here. It combines sort of our knowledges together in the fact that it is a Bitcoin mining stock that is out there. And then also, only in that $2 range, has weekly options. They don't pay a ton of money, but again, if you're only paying $2 a share, you only need to get a nickel or a dime, out of weekly options, right? So we're going to work on that. I know you do. I'm not that familiar. That's why I'm loving to do it with Jeremy. He is an expert on it, as you've seen in our Slack channels over the year. His results there, so you don't argue with results for sure. So I'm very excited to learn more about that and get more into it. What do we see going on here? Our biggest movers up today. Let's keep an eye. What did Oris do here? I didn't keep an eye there. Oris, ORIS, did that move up after that halt there? That is Oriental Rise. It did. Look at that. That one just kept going. Man, we would have nailed that one, huh? Look at that. Now at $13.50. And again, this one has room up to like $30 because it hit 56 yesterday. It's just broken through the other two highs that we saw it sort of get to yesterday. Besides that 50, it was 1447, then 1491. The break of that gives some serious move to the upside here, as you can see. I mean, and it gapped on a halt yesterday from 14 to like 18. So this is definitely in play. Keep your eyes on ORIS here. ORIS for another run. Because what you got to keep in mind, it's down 75% versus yesterday. It dumped. It dumped. So this is a fun one to watch play here. Hey, Ron, I know you weren't here earlier, so I do want to give you some insight that I was giving folks about Bitcoin. If you noticed yesterday on that drop, the thing for me that was the most impressive, or that I was even a bigger takeaway, is in 5 minutes while we took that fall down, as we saw a cascade of liquidations take us from 99,000 all the way to 92 in a matter of 20 minutes. Oh yeah, that's definitely a pump and dumper there on. In the matter of 2 minutes, we moved back from 92 to 96, and in less than a half hour, we're right back to 98,000. When it came to Bitcoin, it showed you that there is an immense amount of buy walls in there that people are going to do. So these liquidations, that was the first attempt to manipulate it. It worked for them when they see leverage that big. And if we pull up coin, let me do that. We'll pull up CoinStat here and take a look at those liquidations, and I can show you a little bit more what I'm talking about that level. So when we look at liquidations over the last 24 hours, we see that there was a $500 million. We haven't seen that number in a while. And you can see it here better on this one. They don't let you pull it off anymore? You used to be able to just pull this one up. But on this middle spot where you see the green and the red here, that's the liquidations. The green being all the way up there. That's the volume spikes. You can see that back on August, we had one that was almost as big. But that's the biggest that we've had in a year. They only show you about a year's information here. So it was the biggest set of liquidations we saw in a year. And then if we take a look at open interest, which is the amount of open, oh, I don't like that one. I like this one. Here we go. Open interest, we can see, let me blow this up a little bit more. So blue here is open interest, and we can see that yesterday we got up towards $131 billion in open perpetual futures. Which is just a huge amount. As you can see, that again, the biggest amount that we've had ever. You go back into 2021 and stuff. We used to think it was elevated. It was severely elevated and would cause crashes when you had about 57 billion. We now have over 100 billion. Now we're a little bit more insulated there, and a couple of things you got to keep in mind that open interest takes into account the price that Bitcoin is trading at. So if Bitcoin's doubled in price, the open interest, the same amount of contracts, is going to cause twice the open interest, right? So it is something to keep in mind there. So it does get a little deceiving sometimes. These are the things that I do like to point out, is that if you look, Bitcoin's price has pretty much doubled since the time that we saw it over here. And open interest is basically moved up in that same amount. But if we compare it back to 2021, again, Bitcoin's price was trading, at 60, 70,000, and we were seeing that 50. So there was a huge amount of, percentage-wise, this would be about the same amount. Maybe we're a little bit higher right now. Another component to that matters is the amount of open options on IBIT kind of weigh this out too, right? We've seen that there'll be, almost $2 billion a day in option movement on IBIT alone. So if you compare that, it's only 1/10 of what you see in the perpetual futures. That's why these perp futures matter. What you saw yesterday can happen. You can see $1 billion literally liquidated in a matter of 10 to 20 minutes. And it moves the market still. That's why it's a 100 vol item, right? That's why people love it. That's why they also say, and as Steve pointed out yesterday, don't use leverage. Um, and that's where he's exactly right. Anybody that was playing with leverage, even probably a small amount of leverage, 3 or 4%, they got liquidated. That's why that caused that huge move. Once you get to the point where you hit like this fourth level down here that we hit right at about 525, it means that you've taken out the people that had in, their stops at 98, 96, 95. And once you hit that one, you can see once they hit those stops at 98, it was over. It just took out everybody. So, we'll see what happens here today. Like I said, 99, 275. I couldn't be more bullish still on the markets. I do think that the new AI crypto czar is a good choice there. I think it's good. Again, I will reiterate, I think it's good for Uniswap, UNI. I think it's good for XRP. I think it's good for XML. It's good for Link, LINK, for Solana. It's going to be good for a couple of different ones, and what we'll start to keep an eye on. What's going on there, Zora? Good to see you. We're talking a little crypto right here. What is good to see here is that, David Sachs came from the PayPal mafia, as it's known, Elon and Peter Thiel and that group. So he's tied in also with Brad Glaringhouse, who came from that world of PayPal. There is a few people, Brian Armstrong, I believe, was part of the PayPal group. So a lot of folks that are in the crypto industry that are sort of entrenched in that area come from that world and know him personally. So I do think it's a strong move here for crypto. Overall, I think it is, strong. Again, I said for Ripple, for Chainlink, for Uniswap. I think that some of these that were facing Wells reports, and what we can do a little more research on, and if you want to do it yourself, would be take a look at who got offered. It's very public knowledge who got Wells reports notices in the last few years. So Uniswap was one of them for sure. We know the Coinbase, we know Kraken. Those companies, they're going to get what's known as a notice that basically says we've finished our investigation and we are not going to press charges. SMCI, Ron says here. Let's take a look, Ron. It should be right here somewhere. Maybe not. It's definitely on this one. Not sure what the impedance is there. Up about, oh yeah, 3%. Nice little move up here, Ron. Moving nicely. Oh yeah, look at that. Good catch there, Ron. That's one, though, you got to get above that 42.82 here, Ron. You can see, and I'll even say, if you break 42.63, watch for this to run. 42.63 would be the key to watch on a short-term chart for today. You can see with that resistance. If we switch over to an hourly, yeah, we're going to see that 42.80 pop up. Yep, 42.80. So yeah, so I do think crypto, I think the crypto stocks, Ron, you and I were talking a little bit yesterday about it. I'm going to do a much bigger look into, you guys know I love Mara. I think Mara is the number one, Bitcoin mining company I would be purchasing now. I've been playing the options, but I do want to buy some for longer term because they are developing a Bitcoin strategy similar to MicroStrategy where they're raising money to buy Bitcoin. And some people know and some people don't yet. And as that starts to get more known and more known, we've seen the moves up by MicroStrategy there. And just think, all this talk about Microsoft and how Michael Saylor, met with their board and explained to them how they could increase their net worth by $5 trillion by developing a Bitcoin strategy with their, their free cash money. What if they give just a little of that in there? That's going to make that whole market move up, and then people will really notice Mara and that they're doing that. Look at that, 42.52. This thing's still running here, Ron. Struggling a little bit, but looking good. We do see Tick moving to the negative side here. about 339 seems to be hitting. And again, I want to mention for everybody, VIX, you're coming into a weekend. VIX is very low. What do we do when VIX is in that 13 range per Scott Bauer? This is when we buy our protection, right? Don't buy VIX when you need it. Buy it before you need it. So I know that I've looked at, and I'm in a nice little move there on a VIX move to the upside. And we know when it runs, where it runs to. I mean, again, this isn't a secret. We know that it runs up usually to that $20 range, $24 range, right? So if you're looking to do something, covered calls in that 20 to 24. M&A and mining, I do think you'll see that, Ron. I think that's why one of the things I want to take a look at when I look at the miners to see who has money and who doesn't. I will say that a lot of that happened on the crypto side already with the when we had the crash. When after SBF and the FTX implosion, we saw a lot of that sort of where people who had big orders in for mining equipment and couldn't afford it anymore were selling it on the open market to the Maras of the world, the Riots of the world, the Hut. That's why some of those have made some real nice moves up, is they were able to get in and buy the equipment and buy pieces of the company. So what seems to happen there on is we've seen little purchases here and there of parts of the companies, whether it be a data center here. I saw, it might have been your Clean Spark that I saw bought a windmill out in your part of the world, out towards western Texas into Utah, Idaho. And you're seeing things like that where they're buying green energy production in different places. And I guess the other part is what you and I were talking about yesterday, and Zora, you would understand this too, is one of the big parts that crypto companies and Bitcoin mining companies are going to have a huge advantage in why they're going to become, in my opinion, one of the more valuable companies and components within the new AI and data center world, is they've already gobbled up spots next to the cheapest energy, right? We know the Bitcoin miners needed the cheapest energy. They had to have the cheapest energy. So they've gone to these places and they've bought up, in West Texas, all that, where Riot bought that whole area, Mara bought that whole area, they bought all of these places that are attached to the grid and there was surplus energy, and then places where there wasn't even attached to the grid. And as they build up data centers there, that's where they're going to have an advantage, because now as these data center companies say, oh man, I've got to get to that next step. I need more energy. I need this. They're going to be playing catch up. These, relationships, and most of these Bitcoin mining companies in the last bull run that came up, they pre-bought their energy. In other words, they did long-term contracts to take that energy in Texas, to take that energy in different places. North Carolina is one that's a big spot where they did a lot of stuff. Even towards my area in Ohio, there's been a little bit of controversy. They were doing solar to do it. So you're seeing, you're going to see that. So I do think it's one of those areas, like nuclear energy, that's going to take off, one way or the other as technology does, because it has to. Again, what we want to look at is, under the new administration, while rules might change and deregulation and this or that of different areas, it's more about what does technology need to make that next jump. And we know for electronic vehicles to make that next jump in, for not just them, but for everything, fission, right? Hydrogen energy is going to have to come into play. And, these are the things to keep a look at. They're not going to go away. Nuclear energy. Yeah, well, so you don't see it as much here in the U.S., Ron. That is really more of a world where you see it in developing countries, where it really becomes a double benefit. Oh, it went right to that 43, huh? Look at that, see? Again, those charts, technical analysis, price action doesn't lie. You could see where it was going to. We see a lot of uses of hydroelectric dams in areas. Zora, I would be that 92 was pretty tough that we saw last night. I was talking here and mentioned, it only took 5 minutes to 10 minutes for it to bounce back from that 92 all the way to 98. And we lost $500 million of liquidations across perpetual futures. So it showed you what you could sort of expect is, could it get 90? Yeah, it absolutely can. I'd be more looking to start to pick up a little bit in that 92 area if I were you. I know that you sold a little bit. I wouldn't be afraid, and in fact, I wouldn't be afraid just to take a 5% win and maybe at 95 pick up a little, and then put another order in at 92, and then maybe the rest of your order in at 90. You know what I mean? If that makes sense to you. Feather it in, layer it in would not be a bad idea in any circumstance. And it's tough to see. I had thought that we were going to, see. Yeah, it happened at 5:30 last night. There was a big drop. It went right back to 92. But it was, if I show you here on the chart, it was bought back in literally no time. It was right here. It dropped down. Once it got below 98, it caused a mass of liquidations across perps. Got all the way down to like 92 and change, 92 oh something. But this is a 5 minute chart. 5 minutes later, it was trading back up at 95, and 15 minutes later, back at 98. So you know what I mean? Is I'd have them in there, in the different spots, a little bit here, a little bit there. Um, yeah, and again, what I'll point to is that there's a different dynamic where now we're seeing more and more companies that are going to follow MicroStrategy. There is no doubt. They might not be the largest. Like, is Microsoft going to do it? I have no idea, and I don't think they do it with a large percentage of their treasury. But do they dip? Like, remember when Tesla dipped, they bought $1 billion of Bitcoin that they still own 800 million of. So, when these companies, big companies, dip in, for them to just put $1 billion into Bitcoin is nothing. In the same way, Michael Saylor could decide tomorrow to raise another 42 billion to buy Bitcoin, and he's been oversubscribed on every single raise that he does. So, you got to take those things, have a plan in place. Again, I wouldn't be, whereas a year ago when I was talking to you, Zora specifically, and then Ron a little bit with you also, I was saying I'm not getting into many of the alts, right? I pared down my list. I kept certain ones, the Cardanos, the XRPs, but I got out of a lot of the other ones and sort of consolidated back into Bitcoin and Ethereum. Now I'm putting money back into alts that I still think are the alts that matter. Like I said, the Uniswaps, it is the largest decentralized exchange. It's only going to continue to grow and do things as it gets regulatory clarity and, sort of connects somehow into that TradFi piece. I don't know what that looks like, but it's moving in that direction. Ripple, same thing. It moves up like on that direction. In my opinion. Chainlink will move up in that direction. And there are some others that are newer that I'm looking at and we'll talk more about. If you want to take a runner on AI, Fetch AI is a good one to take a look at. FET. And other is Render, another one that I think it's up like 20% today, though. But Render, I talked about earlier this week here, is always one that I've liked that Zora, we've been in the past. I need to see that on the daily chart, but you can see here, I mean, it shot up from 9 to 12, since Thursday. But those would be the things I would look at. You're definitely not going to go wrong by doing that. Today we are ending up a little early here, and we're not back on till our man Charlie Moon, the legend himself, comes on at 1 o'clock. Yeah, you can't go wrong. The other one that I like there, Zora, that I was talking about, BITF, is an inexpensive one trading in $2.17 that I am thinking about purchasing, 100 shares or 200 shares and then selling options against it. A little bit of a wheel trade here. So if you're interested in something like that you can do fairly inexpensively, BITF has weekly options, and I am looking at purchasing some here and then selling out of the money options until I basically get my money down very low, my cost down. We have our expert there on the wheel trade, Jeremy Vreeland. He thinks we can get it down to 0 in under 3 months. So we're going to try to do that. We're going to be watching it here and talking about it when we do it. So we'll keep you there. But definitely one to keep a look at. You know, I wouldn't mind owning a couple of hundred shares of this at no cost, right? And then just let it ride. So interesting things. And remember, some of this stuff you can now do through managed IRA accounts to avoid, taxes. And again, Dr. Alan Ellman that works with us here talks about that. He does covered calls off of owned stocks in a yeah, definitely should. Zora is it's great. And take a look at the Blue Collar Investing Corp. And I will there's videos of his on our YouTube station. There's 6 already that he goes into his systems, and I can send you over a couple of his calculators that he uses to do that type of stuff. But a very successful system, lowers your risk. And he is one of the best at it. It's been doing it like 38 years. And and I think it's something that's definitely, listen, I'm watching some of these guys that have just amassed monies. Zora, you've seen them in the Prosper rooms over the years, right? The guys like Alex and, Kim that started small but just kept on doing that. When I would listen more and more to some of the techniques they used, one of them was definitely, the use of like these wheel trades. Definitely the use of a wheel trade, lowering your cost while you actually own the stock. It cuts down your risk even less than, especially Dr. Ellman's way that he does it. It basically lowers your risk less than even just buying a stock by itself. So, and with Jeremy's system, he does it to try to earn income. So basically he wants it to pay him. So he's a little bit more aggressive. So we'll have it. Yeah, Ron, we can definitely chat in there, my friend. You know that. Anytime, sir. Zora, I'll have to get you in our Slack channel, which is the company one, but I can get you in there into our trading room. So let me mark myself a note there for that. I'll get you in there, Zora. Okay, I am going to end it up for today, everybody. Have a fantastic weekend, and we will see you on Monday, y'all.